Hug your people tight. If you know somebody inside of the NFL that they need to make sure that they have their T's crossed and their I's dotted, and that if they do need help to reach out. And if you know a man, same thing, because a lot of men aren't going to reach out. A lot of men are going to just work in silence, and that is not helpful either. Nobody has to suffer in silence, especially when mental health services and coaches and things like that exist in high levels in our country now. Nobody should be free in silence. So go love on your people, talk on your people, and make it a really good day.
Hi, welcome to Say More Words, a podcast that was created to emphasize the human experience through stories. I hope that you come here to learn, to expand, and most importantly, learn how to say more words. Speak your story, speak your truth, boo boo. We're so happy you're here.
Good morning. I don't have a song of the day today, and you're going to get ready with me for my day because that's how we're living life these days. And but I don't have a song of the day because we're talking about like a real hard conversation, real hard. The trigger warnings, there will be talks of suicide and mental health and hard things. So if that is hard for you, you are more than welcome to skedaddle. Um, but and this isn't the standard conversation that you have here, but I think it's an important conversation. Um, And we're going to be talking about the NFL. And even if you don't care about the NFL, that is totally cool. You don't have to care about them to understand and maybe even relate to some of the things we talk about today. Um, so I posted on Facebook today after some processing time. um, Somebody that I knew, I didn't know him well, I'd only met him a couple times, but somebody I knew that played in the NFL passed away this week. And it took like a minute to process. Every time we have somebody inside of the NFL, one of these young babies committing suicide, it takes a minute to. And well, let me tell you why. So a couple of years ago, if you haven't heard this story, if you have heard this story, I'm sorry. It's one of my favorite stories. But a couple of years ago, I had to jump on a last minute flight to Iowa to interview with a company. All of their CEOs were all going to be in the same place. And for a conference, they asked, after reviewing a deck that I had sent them about the work that I do and how I could help with the re-entry back into the workplace. Y'all remember that time when everybody was fighting going back to work or going back into the office after working remote for so long? This is about 3 years ago. And I was going to interview, really, really upset about one, the cost of the flight, because does it cost $900 to go to Iowa? And then two, I was flying through Chicago O'Hare. And while on that flight, and this was my, I don't know, third or fourth flight that year. This happened at the beginning of the year. That I ended up sitting next to a retired NFL player. And that retired NFL player ended up being Mike Singletary. And I didn't know he was like a really big deal until I got off the flight. And turns out he's a really big deal. And I got chastised on Facebook for it. But we had really good conversations. And at one point he was like, "You're really good. You're really, you're really good at what you do." I was like, "Thank you." And then, he made a joke like about if he'd ever, like, if we were ever going to cross paths again, and he hoped we did. And I was like, "This is my universe, Mike. We are going to cross paths. Like, you're a big deal, so am I." And I wasn't even a big deal. Maybe not even still, yeah, a big deal. But I was like, "We're going to cross paths." And then sure enough, like 9 months later, we shared a stage together. He is a he does leadership training. He's written a book. He puts on conferences. He's amazing. And so it's one of the greatest things. But it was, a very big deal for people like our sweet Sumo who is watching and editing this. Like when I told him, he was like, that's one of the best football players of all time. And, everyone lost their mind. And so then I kind of just sat in the space of like, he thinks I'm pretty good at this. That's really awesome. That proof seeking we do to like for ourselves to like prove that we're actually good at what we do or you know anyways, then that year every flight I got on I ended up sitting next to either a retired NFL player or a current player. And before dad died, one of the last things he said to me was that I needed to pursue the NFL because why would God put me in a position to keep running into all these NFL players, retired and current, if there wasn't something there for me? It's like, okay, whatever. Fast forward, got a spicy moment. And I was like, there was just one day I woke up and I'm like, I have to figure this out. And because God is good and the universe is good, like I said it out loud. I'm like, I think I need to figure out this NFL thing. Well, then I ended up having to have a conversation with somebody who needed me to connect them with somebody that I knew. And he was like, how can I help you? I was like, can you give me? I'm like, if you know anybody in the NFL, that would be great. That's what I'm looking for today. This is all within the same 24 hours. And he goes, oh, yeah, one of my buddies from high school works for a team. I'm not going to say which team. And I can connect the two of you. And I was like, well, that's amazing. Like, of course you can, because that's how this works. And I got connected with that team. I spent all of May and June last year interviewing, June, July, yeah, May and June interviewing with said team, thinking I've got it in the bag. And then some issues happened, not like nothing that I did, just some things happening on the team and on the staff and whatnot that deferred that assignment for me. And I've had a lot of people since posting about Josh's death this week. They're like, what are you going to do with the NFL? Like, what are you doing? And honestly, the NFL has had more suicides, more and more suicides every year. And that has always been very troubling for me. I have had the opportunity to talk to a lot of retired NFL players, both really big names and people who were in for a couple seasons and got out. I just kept running into players. And part of the platform that I was using with the team that I'm going to be working with is we've got to do something different. Every NFL team has a sports psychologist on it. Yes. Um, but like there are not a lot of them have stats how many of the players are actually using them and if the players who are struggling the most are actually using the sports psychologist. Because if we look at what they call the men's mental health crisis, um, more and more men today need mental health services but still live under the ideation of the 1990s and 80s and 70s and 60s and 50s that just like rub some dirt in it, you'll be fine and move on. That you can't have emotions, you just have to figure it out, you just need to perform. So there's more mental health issues today than there was in the past, and they're still trying to take care of them with the same techniques that their fathers used, and it doesn't work. And so inside of the NFL, what's happening is that these sweet babies, and I call them babies because after being around them last summer, I'm like, oh, you all are just gigantic children. You're just gigantic children who are extremely talented. Um, what's happening is like more and more we have these little boys because every adult is a 6-year old on the inside. Their 6-year old selves are like, I finally did it. I made it happen. I made the dream. For some of them, it's drastically changing the outlook for their families. because they are now going and making more money than their families have ever made in their entire lives. For some of them, it's their little boy dream coming true that they worked really, really hard for. And it's like a getting drafted into the NFL or getting picked up by the NFL is like that, like, I did it, all the work was worth it type of thing. Um, they have all of this pressure to take care of their families and to perform. And what's really interesting about it, very similar to like people in the Olympics, their bodies are capable. They train them very, very well. What is happening when they mess up or stutter step or something happens on the field and they're not performing well, it's happening inside of their head. They're getting stuck. They are getting scared. They are living in limiting beliefs, but nobody's working on them on that aspect of life. The like whether like they're uncomfortable or they don't know what to do, or maybe like an old friend or their parents called and it really set them back and spiraling. These are all things that happen with them, and they don't think to like contact a sports psychologist for it, or like they don't know what to do with their money, or maybe they spend all of their money. That is a huge epidemic inside of this league as well. As they come in, no one teaches them about money because, and they came from families that don't have it. They spend all of their money, so by the time they're out of the league, they got nothing. And what sucks about it is that the NFL is a wonderful career, right? It is a pedestal and it is the dream, but the dream doesn't last forever because eventually your body gives out, or you get traded and you don't get picked up, or like you get let go and you don't get picked up. And there's so many different things that can happen, but it's not a forever career. But the boys go in thinking that it's a forever career. So if something happens, or like some of the men that we lost this year found out that they were going to get traded or they were going to get let go and couldn't handle the stress. Now, this is just speculation because some of them we don't actually know what it was that caused them to do it. There was no note or anything. But if you look at what was going on in their lives prior, um, there's some big things that may have sparked it. It could also be unaddressed mental health issues. But if we have a sports psychologist on the team, why aren't those being addressed? Well, the men have to admit it. They have to feel safe. They have to feel comfortable. Men have to feel safe and comfortable to admit their vulnerabilities on the biggest stage in the country. So if they're going to get let go and they're not mentally strong enough, or they are scared, or they feel like their dream is being let go, sometimes that results in very, very drastic things, or it results in them losing all of their money, or it results in, it results in what I like to call the Adrian Peterson effect of like you have 10 baby mamas and now all of a sudden no money and now you're getting arrested all of the time. Like that doesn't have to be the end of a very, very successful career. It just doesn't. And so that's kind of what I pitched. Like they need more support. They need mental health support that isn't fully, not even like fully therapist, but they need somebody to talk to that's not their mom, who they're also supporting. They need somebody who is giving them financial advice. Now, I don't do the financial advice part, that's not me, but it's guiding them to financial advisors who have worked with players before, like Corey Proctor, who has a financial service here in South Lake. Like he was a player at one point, and like guiding them towards people who understand the league, understand the stress, understand what is possible, that it is possible you could be in for a year, you could be in for 10, but you're not going to be in for the rest of your life. So you have to have a plan. And a good majority of them don't think of that because they think they're invincible. And then on top of that, they're like mental health of being supported and cared and loved for, because that's not their coach's job. Their coach's jobs are to make them really good, make their bodies really good. But if their brain is not on board, then then they're not going to perform. I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of retired NFL players, and like the ones that can be honest with me and are like, yeah, there's moments where um, like I was getting ready for the biggest stage inside the NFL, and I was terrified because I was thinking about letting everybody down, and that was scary for me. But I wasn't going to admit that to anybody. I'm sure you weren't. Or they were scared that what's going to happen once they're out. Like, what is that life going to be like? What are they going to have? What is going to be capable? Is their purpose going to all of a sudden be gone? There's a lot of fears that they don't get to work through with anybody. And I was like, I'm that person. I'm very much like the somewhere between the big sister and the mom who they can feel comfortable talking to, but I'm not financially or emotionally dependent on them. So I can tell it like it is. And it's something like it's amazing to me that college college football programs are bringing on mindset specialists like myself before the NFL is. And the reason why they're doing it is because of the UIL deals. Now, all of a sudden, we have college students making millions of dollars and making terrible decisions. And just because they get a UIL deal does not mean that they're going to make it into the NFL with sweet babies. And so there are more and more college football teams that are hiring specialists like me that have worked in sports, not necessarily sports psychology, but in social psychology, or have worked in education and understand the mindset of these. If you're an NFL player and you're listening to this, like, I don't mean to call you, but like deep down inside, you are an adult living your 6-year-old dream. So these sweet babies, right? Like there's not a lot of guidance on like life. And if you don't have people in your life who can give solid advice for these major things that you're having to do and handle while also performing on one of the biggest stages, like that is a lot of, and some of them succumb to it. And part of the reason too, it's not just the suicide rates, which in fact, like one of the teams that I'm looking at working with this upcoming season, we had this happen. We lost one of our guys, and it was traumatic for me that like that did not have to happen. Somebody could have set him for success on what life is going to look like post your career. They're not thinking futuristic, they're just thinking right now. And why this is also so important to me is that the NFL, you look at the psychology of the NFL and how it controls our country and the men in our country, it is because every little boy in this country grows up loving a certain team. And I shouldn't say every little boy, not every little boy, but like, like I feel like every little boy has a team that they love. And then what we have found is that grown men, and you know this, if you have a man in your life who's a fanatic about the NFL and controls their schedule around the fall, there are some whose moods are based on whether a 25-year-old is going to play well that weekend or not. Their moods are there. I actually have a friend who is a police officer or is a retired police officer here from DFW, and she said the domestic abuse calls increase when the Cowboys lose. What? So if you don't think we have like a men's mental health crisis happening here in our country, you are mistaken. But also, if the NFL is a platform that men universally are obsessed with, why would we not help them? Also, don't you just really want, like, I think about my son. Like, he hasn't picked a team or picked a player. He has for baseball, but he hasn't like picked a team or picked a player in the NFL. But, like, if I'm having my son look up to a sports person and say like that's my guy and wants to wear his jersey and stuff like that, like wouldn't you want that person to be a really good person? Like I had the opportunity to meet Justin Jefferson, and that is a very, very good person. If my son wants to idolize him, he is a phenomenal football player, but he's a very good person. If my son wants to idolize him, in the NFL world, I am totally here for it because he is a good person. Don't we want more and more good people being and representing and being honest about their lives? Like another one of my favorites, my her son is Max Crosby, and him being open and honest about his struggles and what he has done to improve himself and to be better and to work hard and train hard, but also take care of himself. Like, don't we want more Max Crosbys inside of our league? That's what I am trying to do. That's what I am trying to do to help change the mental health game in this country for men by like supporting one of the things that they are obsessed with. And I like funny thing that my dad said once was that he was like, you've always been obsessed with football, but you were more obsessed with the players than you were the game. Like, well, yeah, in high school, because I mean, obviously it's high school. He's like, no, you've always been obsessed with like how they're performing, if they're doing well, are they injured? Because I was going to go into athletic training for a while there. Are they injured? What do they need? And he's like, just go. Just enter the NFL and help them the way that you help everyday people. Something has to be done. More support needs to exist for them. And this isn't an idolization of the NFL. While I do love the NFL, this is an idolization of trying to change the people our kids look up to, or not even change, trying to support the people our kids look up to, and then giving them hope for when they get out of the league. Like, we support them when they're in the league, kind of, depending on how good you are and whatnot. And then we just throw them to the wind. And some of them get so lost. And it doesn't have to be like that. They're actually truly set up for success for the rest of their lives if somebody's guiding them through that. But that's not their coach's job. It's not their coach's job. So I don't actually know, like, I didn't have a way to wrap this up, but it was something that I really wanted to talk about and bring to light. And then also, it helps me answer all of the questions that I'm getting in my DMs about, like, what are you going to do for the NFL? What is happening? How did you get there? I took foot and set the one foot in front of the other and started to follow the path of who needs help and how you can help more people. Like, one of my big things is like, I want to help more people. And if I can help the people who are being idolized and they can feel supported and loved, and then that messaging can go out to our children and to the men in the world, and that focusing on yourself and your lifestyle and your mental health and all of that, that's important and you can do it, I will have felt successful here. We don't need any careless death. We don't need any anywhere in the world. I am not saying that loss is only hard here, it's hard everywhere, but this is an area we can help. So hug your people tight. If you know somebody inside of the NFL that they need to make sure that they have their T's crossed and their I's dotted, and that if they do need help to reach out. And if you know a man, same thing, because a lot of men aren't going to reach out. A lot of men are going to just work in silence. And that is not helpful either. Nobody has to suffer in silence, especially when mental health services and coaches and things like that exist in high levels in our country now. Nobody should be free in silence. So go love on your people, talk on your people, and make it a really good day. I'm sorry, it was a really hard conversation. And if you stayed to the end, I love you a whole bunch. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Please like and subscribe. If you know somebody inside of the NFL, feel free to send them this and tell them that I am willing to work with them or help them and their teammates and all of the things. We as a country are great. We as a country are really bad in a lot of places. Mental health is one of them. Thank you for being here while I say all of the words. I love you. I mean it. Have a great day.